So today's video will be about California's recent plastic bag ban. Now I'm not entirely sure how recent it is exactly, but I know it's like I'm assuming it was passed in the last session and it's just being enacted, more recently. But me personally, I hate the plastic bag ban, and I hate it for a couple of really simple reasons. But I want to start not with the ban itself, but more so my connection to it because there's an organization on campus called CalPERG at UCSB, or I mean it's across all UCs I believe, called CalPERG. And this is a sort of student lobbying or a group. There are lots of these that exist, and I've been part of them, which I'll get to later. But they're like the whole environment, clean up the oceans, less trash, stuff like that, which, I think is a noble cause. A lot of people really hate giving them $10. Me personally, I give them my $10 every quarter because who gives a shit? But CalPERG was really pushing this ban, and I know that a lot of students on campus, and I'm assuming across other campuses as well, were directly involved in lobbying for this ban. So before I talk about why I think this ban is bad policy, I want to talk about how I think that student advocacy organizations sort of function to co-opt the energy of the youth. They seek to bring in people who care about making changes, and they kind of just woo them. It's a really it's a tested strategy. It's a good strategy. People love to feel important, and I've been to a couple of the sorts of conferences where these student groups organize and things like that. And these conferences are or at least the ones I've been to, were pretty vapid, I've got to say, in terms of actually advocating for direction and policy and things like that. And I think that's more so a symptom of the politics we have. It's not really the fault of these groups, but I think these groups, I think they're honestly dangerous, because when you can convince somebody that working really hard and testifying before Congress or before the state house and things like that to pass this ban, that's a good and important effective thing, a good use of their time. I think you take them away from better uses of their time, which would be involved in more directly challenging power and changing the political system that we operate in, and actually passing more meaningful legislation than that. That was just a brief aside. What I really want to talk about in terms of the actual ban itself is, it's a question of goals, right? Because obviously this is billed as environmental policy. We're going to use less plastic. We're going to save the world, guys. We're going to look at us. We're taking real action to get plastic out of our something. I don't know. I think that is it's silly because it's just not true. The reason that corporations use plastic is not because they want to destroy the environment. They use it because it's cheap. Much like most problems in our society, this is a capitalism problem. This is a profit motive problem. If you have cheap plastic, then why not just throw it on everything? Plastic is great. Plastic is waterproof. Plastic, you can have hard plastic, you can have soft plastic, you can shrink wrap things, you can make things feel luxury when they're not. You can wrap a product at every single stage in its own little individual, super cool, sexy layer of plastic. And who cares? It's 8 cents. It's super cheap. So when you're looking at the problem with plastic, the problem is not, oh, people are getting too many plastic bags at the grocery store and they're probably throwing them into the ocean and killing dolphins. No, the problem with plastic is that plastic is a very cheap material, and it's very integrated into our economic structure. And this is mostly because plastic is a petroleum product. Plastic is made out of oil, if you're not familiar. And unfortunately, we live in a world that's still, oil is the lifeblood of every economy still, unfortunately, because we shouldn't do that. Climate change is terrifying, moving very fast. But yeah, plastic is it's cheap, but it's also disposable, and I mean that also introduces a trash problem, where if we just keep producing more plastic, it doesn't really biodegrade. We're trying to like fucking genetically engineer earthworms to eat it and stuff like that. It's like, what if we just didn't make so much? Could we think of that? Could we maybe just not? The answer is no, and the answer is no because again, it's cheap. Plastic is cheap. That is the thing that you have to address if you want to reduce plastic use. And so when I think about, I'm not like super well read in plastics, beyond like this sort of surface level knowledge, but when I think about plastic and how we have too much of it in our society, the thing that usually comes to my mind is overpackaging. As I mentioned before, companies will, who gives a shit, dude? It's 8 fucking cents. It's 2 cents, 1 cent per unit, whatever. It's so cheap to just wrap stuff in as much plastic as you want. And there's no oversight on this. There's no government body saying, hey, what, why did you wrap each item in this 25 pack in its own individual plastic, and then when you open that plastic, there's a shrink wrap version of the same plastic. What are we doing? That doesn't exist. And that doesn't exist because, again, let me just say it now, because our political system is primarily geared on making capitalism function, nothing else. There's no other motive. Human beings, human rights, and transport, navigability. I mean, any of the basic things that actually assist your life, these are not considered in terms of how our laws are crafted. It's just not relevant. I think that's an issue. One thing that I really like to think about when it comes to plastics, I mean, and you can look at like plastic bottles are a really big example of this. I mean, I think our generation has a hard time understanding what life was like before plastic bottles. But if you ask me, it was better. The glass Coke bottles and glass bottles in general were just collected and reused. You know, the bottle caps was the only disposable part, and those are pieces of metal that you can leave them in a fucking shed for 47,000 years. Get them out the shed, melt them down. Now you make something else out of it. There's no loss in this process the way that there is with plastic, because again, plastic is a disposable material, a material that cannot. I mean, I know plastic is a polymer, so it's a long chain of molecules, right? And when you melt down plastic and try to reconstitute it, you are destroying those polymers and you're making the plastic weaker, shittier, not as good. Let's just go get make new plastic out of that fresh oil we just slipped out of the ground. That's a better option. And so I think instead of trying to make plastic work, we just need to stop working with plastic. It wasn't that hard. We were much poorer using no plastic at all. There's no reason that as rich as we are today, as a country, as a society, that we need to use plastic, except for the fact that capital for blah blah. I can't even get into it all. But that is to say, the choice is between, we can continue to pursue, give me something cheap and disposable, and I'll dispose of it and get another one because it's cheap and I don't care. Or we can say, well, we actually care that things aren't just constantly being disposed in our society. We care more for, the environment and the effects that it will have on that. We care for the idea, the notion that you can just produce to the ends of the earth and nothing will ever happen to you, because that's not the case. It's never has been the case. And we sort of enforce this thinking through things like the use of plastic. So I really do think we should just go back to older models. And I feel the same way with technology. I think there's lots of ways that we allow progress. We allow capitalist invasion of our life and our society and all of these different ways to masquerade as progress, to masquerade as technological change, to masquerade as the next big step when they're not. The plastics have their place. And I think there's lots of industrial uses for plastics that are going to be more difficult to replace than simpler things like consumer plastics. But the effort cannot just exist on the consumers, which brings me to my next point, which is the fact that these sorts of regulations, banning plastic bags in favor of these paper bags, which, I mean, I hate these paper bags. I do. I hate them for a number of reasons, like I mentioned before. But the biggest reason I hate them is because I bike with my groceries. I usually can fit all my groceries in my backpack that I take when I bike to go get groceries. But when I can't, I need the plastic bags to hang off my fucking bicycle handlebars, because these paper bags always, and I mean always, break. They do not work. They're bad. They're bad at being bags because they're little fucking pieces of cardboard damn near glued to each other. They don't work the way that plastic works. Not that they can't, but they don't. And that's another really big part of the issue, is because when we make policy like this, what are the consequences? It's like, think about the plastic straw ban, right? And all the issues that caused. There's a really big trend of liberals like engaging with conservatives and this conservative thinker and these conservative arguments, blah, 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 trans people with this and with that. And the same thing exists for these sorts of environmental regulations, where we have environmental regulations that are going to clean up the environment, when in reality, all they do is piss people off because they make their lives more difficult in very insignificant ways, but very unnecessary ways as well. If you wanted to help reduce the amount of plastic in society, maybe let's not make our cars completely out of plastic. I don't know. There are options here. There are many options. But the fact that the thing that we get of the many options available is, fuck you and your bike ride from the grocery stores. Fuck you and your drink that you leave in your car while you're on your long fucking trucking trips, because now it's going to be a soggy fucking napkin in the bottom of it instead of the straw that it began as. Those things are bad. They're corrosive. And they, much more so than the ideas that liberals have about, you're giving ammunition to the right wing by being gay so hard. They hate the gays. This actually does give real, legitimate ammunition to the right, because it creates grievance that people actually do feel. And more so than that, I think we should also consider how these things affect poor people. Poor people have no voice in our politics. We don't have any poor politicians. We don't have any poor representatives. Poverty is, it's the ugly cousin. It's the thing we just don't talk about. We're not really into that. And I think that's a shame, obviously, as somebody who grew up poor. But I think it's also intentional. And I think it's a recipe for the kind of society I don't think most people want. And I don't think it's the sort of thing that we should accept. And so that is to say, I oppose this plastic bag ban for all the reasons mentioned. But I just think it's stupid policy. It's stupid policy, and it's not leading us anywhere. It's great if you're a student advocate and you can say, I testified for this legislation. I met up with some representatives and their staff who were drafting the bill, and it was so awesome, so exciting. And now it's passed, now it's the law. But what did we accomplish here? Now people have to have plastic. Okay, what oh, and the Earth's gonna heal now. It's not. It's not. It's not. So we want to heal the Earth. Let's actually get to some solutions. Let's get to putting some fucking work in for it, because it's not gonna be easy. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a thing that you can just, pass one day and, oh, look at that, now it's all fixed. It's going to be a difficult fight. It's going to be a fight that's going to involve your day-to-day life and existence, not in these sorts of ways that you can just write off and be like, oh, well, I bring my reusable bag, so it's fine. It's going to affect your life in a way that is, it's going to have to affect your life in a way that makes it where you have to be committed to the goal of the policy. I mean, I think compare the way that liberals legislate with the way that Republicans legislate. Republicans are a very hateful political party, a very evil, I would say, political party, but they don't legislate in the way that liberals do, where liberals want to create the illusion of change, the illusion of progress, the idea, the feeling that things are different without changing much. Whereas Republicans will fucking change everything, consequences be damned, for the sake of furthering their political ends. For example, look in 2015 at the trans bathroom bans that you saw. I believe it was Nebraska. That was the big state back then. And Trump was like, you can come to Trump Tower. I love Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner. She's my favorite Caitlyn. And, that it fizzled out for a time. But what did the Republicans do? They came back. And now they're fucking back better than ever. And they are advancing this agenda of erasing trans people, of making it impossible for them to get medical care, of imposing all sorts of fines and restrictions. These sorts of things that are impossible to enforce, but do create a chilling effect that make it difficult to live your life as a trans person in these states. They are not building policy that will make their base feel as if the trans, oh, we made trans illegal. Look, guys, they're illegal now. We can't do it. No, they're actually fucking over these groups that they want to fuck over. And if we, as progressives, as people who care about the environment, as leftists, liberals, whatever, if we want to do the same, we need to pursue policies that actually exact a price. The difference is, unlike Republicans who target the marginalized, the people with no voice, the poor, the trans, the people who no one cares about, Democrats and liberals, leftists, people who want to advance good policy, who want to change the world for the better, who want to not have our whole way of life swallowed by climate change, liberals are faced off against much more powerful interests. And it's a more daunting prospect to face them down. But I don't understand what everyone's afraid of. I don't get it. This is a life or death battle. I don't like dying. I think it's pretty simple what we should do then. If we continue to have politicians who prioritize their safety and their comfort over the material needs of their base, over the needs of society, then we will not have a society left. Or we'll have a society, but it will be completely unrecognizable to you or I, especially me. I am black. Now, a lot of people aren't fans of that, especially the types of people who are actually achieving their political goals. So the point is to say, bad policy, we can do better. It's embarrassing that these are the sorts of victories that we get, and people should have something better to look towards in their future than we ban plastic bags. Big fucking whoop.